And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Pinch hitting for Andrew DeCecco today is Adam Caplan at Caplan NFL from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget the YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. And Adam, you are in the coveted Thursday spot as we get ready for the Eagles and the Packers. Welcome, my friend, to a Thursday edition of the Sports Bash. How are you?
Mike, I hope you are well with this cold weather. Though, believe it or not, we'll talk a little bit about this later. It's actually going to be much warmer on Sunday. But, yeah, I haven't done this Thursday spot now. I don't know how long. You know, I do television for Sports Grid in about an hour and a half, so I got to get ready for that. But happy to fill in for Andrew. I know he's a little bit under the weather, so to speak, so we wish him well. But look, Mike, the Eagles, again, we're at the link today. That's great. You know, they want to get used to the conditions. A.J. Brown, as I understand it, he's got a left knee injury. It's the same one he's had for over 4 weeks. They're just trying to manage it. You know, in this cold weather, you know, you got to get loose. I'm not worried about that. It was just a little weird. I didn't know that they were going to hold him out of Thursday's practice, but he was not there today. The Eagles have not released their injury report. It will be within the next half an hour. But as I understand it, it's his left knee. It's the same one that's been bothering for a while. But yet, Mike, in game, it doesn't look like he's been bothering him.
Yeah, you know, that kind of popped up as he did not practice today, but it does seem like all indications are this is more precautionary just to make sure that he doesn't have any setbacks between now and then. Because, you know, it's really a storyline, Adam. It's interesting, you know, all the talk about Barkley not playing and whether – and I kind of talked about even if you don't get hurt to where you can't play, you don't want to go into a game and get banged up to where it lingers and you can play, but you're not 100%, much like possibly Jordan Love, who might not be at 100%. He's going to play in the game, but he might not be at 100%, and that's what the Eagles wanted to avoid. It wasn't about full getting hurt and missing the whole game. It's also being 100%.
Yeah, and you want him to be able to do what he needs to do, Mike, going forward here with A.J. Brown, because, look, he's an unbelievable football player. What a great transaction they had when they traded for him during draft day of 2 years ago. But, you know, they're calling it maintenance day. That's fine. I just wonder if he has any swelling in that injured knee. Again, it's his left knee, and he's not missed any time in terms of playing. But I just wonder, you know, with such an important time. By the way, the Eagles, as I understand it, they don't practice very hard. Yeah, the Thursday practice, you should know, Mike, is the longest of the week. But it's not like it's a grueling. Some teams really practice harder, like the Steelers, as I understand it. But nevertheless, the Eagles fully expect him to be available for the game and doing what he does. But you know, the big story there was Jalen Hurts returning to practice on Wednesday for the first time since December 20th. You know, he missed 2.5 weeks of practice, and getting his timing back is the big thing. But he's good to go. The only thing is he's got to get final clearance from an independent neurologist. That should come after Friday's practice, which I understand is a computer test. And when you get that, you're good to go.
All right, Adam, you did return to practice. The first game against them, he had 2 touchdowns. He had 2 interceptions, 278 yards. He had the big touchdown pass to A.J. Brown, 67 yards in that game. I don't know, did they win the game because Hurts was great? But what is the approach in this game for him? And, you know, he got knocked out with a concussion. Is he going to be a little ginger running the ball? You see more throws from Jalen Hurts as opposed to him taking off. How do you kind of see the management of this game by Jalen?
Yeah, and that's, you know, Mike, I wanted to focus on that because when you look at Hurts, he's a dual threat. He may not be Lamar Jackson with explosiveness, but he's a power runner. He's a dangerous runner. He's still very good at it. And that's the added element, the so-called +1. Well, it's really what he does in the pass and run game. And by the way, his best game of the season from a passing standpoint was his last full game. That was at the Link against the Steelers. He was really terrific in that game, processing phenomenally, very confident, and you saw more of Kellen Moore and what he wants to run in that game. I just thought they worked well together in that game. Now, the other game that he played really well this season, where I thought it was the level of throws, Mike, was ironically Week 1 in Brazil. That was the only completely full game for Kellen Moore from beginning to end. I was told that was absolutely his scheme. Everyone who graded the tape for us told me the same thing. He goes, that was Kellen Moore's offense. We saw a lot of Kellen Moore's offense against Pittsburgh. Now, being off as Hurts has been, That's the question. How much will Kellen run of his offense? 50%, 75%? Don't know that. But the running, as you mentioned, Mike, can't be scared. If he's clear to play, you got to run. He's got to be. You got to have him running the football. But I love what Jalen did in that game against Pittsburgh. He drove the football, a number of tough throws. He was great. Don't forget Dallas Goedert being back, Mike. He looked great last week. So they're going to have everybody available here, Mike. It's looking good for them. And by the way, Green Bay's got problems in their secondary. We'll talk more about this tomorrow in the segment. We'll get the final injury report. But for me, Mike, if the weather holds up, and right now, by the way, it's going to be much warmer, mid-30s and low wind at the Link in late Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and, we talk a little bit about the Eagles getting healthy here. The Packers played a game last week that didn't have a lot of meaning towards it, and they did play their starters, and one of them got hurt, Christian Watson. He scored in the first game. He didn't have a big day, but he did score a touchdown. But sometimes he can make an impact without even catching the ball because of his speed, and you have to account for him. The Packers passing game without Watson, how do you see it?
It's a big thing, Mike. Yes, he's not a high-volume pass target, but he is their designated shot play receiver. What does that mean? When they throw the ball deep, it's to one guy. We're not talking intermediate 50, 20 yards or less. We're talking about 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 yards. Jordan Love has an enormous arm. When they go deep, it would typically be to him. He was number 9, and Dontavian Wicks told will start for him. Dontavian Wicks was a guy. Greg Cosell actually came on our show. He actually did a great job breaking him down. In fact, Greg thought his junior tape was phenomenal at UVA, but his final tape, his final year at UVA 2 years ago was not as good. He's not a burner like Watson, but he's got a good body and he could run. He's a good football player. So when they go 11 personnel, you'll see Bo Melton for Rutgers in there. You'll see Jaden Reed, who's terrific, who's more of their slot receiver, and Dontavian Wicks. And they have 2 excellent tight ends. We'll talk more about this tomorrow when we break down the matchups. But this absolutely, Mike, helps the Eagles. Because the one area, the teams tell me when you play the Eagles, you're going after Darius Slay, who just turned 34 on January 1st, the oldest starting outside corner in the National Football League.
Yep, by the way, the first time they played, keep this in mind too, Jaden Reed had that 70-yard touchdown. He beat Avonte Maddox on that one. It'll be Cooper DeJean in that spot this time around. We'll see how that changes the dynamics of this game. And you talk about the weather. This is one game where Green Bay doesn't really care what the weather is here in Philadelphia because obviously it's colder in Green Bay than it can be in Philadelphia. So that you get a home team, you get the weather thing, but not in this particular game. So Philly doesn't get that big, cold home field advantage playing against like a Tampa or a team from the South coming here.
Yeah, and look, you're right. They obviously, because of Green Bay and playing there, they know it. And a number of these players have played in snow and cold, and you don't really worry about that. But for the Eagles, Mike, and I do want to mention for them practicing outside, this also with the Jake Elliott issue, Mike, we talked about this, on Tuesday.
Yeah.
They got to get him righted. Now, it's windier today. It's not supposed to be windy, 6 to 8 miles an hour at the Link, which is nothing. But today it's windier, and it's obviously much colder. This is good, for Braden Mann too, the punter. Like he's got to get used to it. So, you know what? I think that's a good decision by Sirianni. People are kind of wondering why you do that because you want to get used to the conditions of the cold weather, and also as Nick talked about with the hard grass at their facility also. And NovaCare. So you go over to where you're going to be playing on Sunday, late Sunday afternoon, and you get used to it. I thought that's a smart thing. So this is a team, again, this is a rematch of the game in Brazil. Yep. And by the way, you remember, Mike, how bad the players were slipping? Most people probably forgot about that. That won't be a problem at the Link, I promise you, on Sunday.
Not only that, the first game, too. Remember, the Eagles turned the ball over 3 times, 2 interceptions by Jalen Hurts. They really cleaned up the turnovers after that 4th week of the season. So if they turn the ball over 3 times in one, if they take care of the ball, that should help them out as well in this one. By the way, I want to get your quick take on this, Adam. You got Green Bay last year played in this game. They were 9-8. They were kind of an afterthought. They scored 48 points in the game against the Cowboys as the 7th seed. But they entered the playoffs as kind of the hot team. kind of limping in here as they get ready. They've lost 3 of their last 5, including their last 2. They were 1-5 against NFC playoff teams. Is this Packers team better than the one that beat Dallas last year?
No. It's funny you say that because I remember doing Sports Grid, and Scott Farrell and I totally agree. We were on Green Bay hard. I remember saying to Scott, don't take the points, take the money line because they're going to win here and they're not going to have a problem against Dallas, and they blew them out. Green Bay, Matt LaFleur annoys me. He's just one of these coaches where it's with the – look, I get it. You signed Josh Jacobs. It's got to start with a run. I get that. $12 million a year at running back, you got to pay the guy. But even without Christian Watson, Mike, they're very deep at receiver. Yes, they have 2 tight ends. Luke Musgrave just returned a couple weeks ago. He missed a lot of the season. Tucker Kraft is a good tight end who could catch the football. You're going to see a lot of him in this game. But he wants balance, so this actually helps the Eagles. The Eagles' run defense, by the way, you remember how they got off to that slow start? Remember, no one ever heard of Emmanuel Wilson. Well, he did great. I think it was like 4 for 46 without looking at it against the Eagles in Week 1. But then, the Eagles' run defense improved over a series of weeks.
4 for 46 is correct, by the way.
Yeah, without looking, I just remember that odd number. But you remember, Mike, in that game, the defense bailed them out. You talked about the first 2 series, they held the Packers to field goals. That was the entire game there. And that was a great game, Mike, from a visual standpoint. That was a fun game to watch. Other than the slipping, which never should have happened, the league has to do a better job of making the fields in much better shape for the players. To have players slipping is an absolute embarrassment. We know what happened in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, absolutely inexcusable. That cannot happen in the league. There's a lot of criticism for that. But the bottom line is, Mike, this is at the link. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. We'll look more at the betting line and the over-under, maybe some player props. But this is not a game where the Eagles should struggle. And the Packers, let's face it, Mike, against the better teams, the Vikings, as you know, in the lines, they didn't win any of those games. A couple of them, they were getting blown out only to make the games closer than they really were. The Packers are a little bit of an overrated team. I thought they'd be better this season than they are. Now they've had injuries. Jair Alexander, who's, by the way, had been out for 2 months anyway. It's not like they hadn't. It's not like he just got hurt. He's been out for 2 months, and now he's done for most likely the playoffs. That's a problem for them. But they're well coached. I'll say that about the Packers, Mike. They're one of the better coached teams for the playoffs.
All right. Well, of course, we'll have more on that tomorrow, including the final injury report. Everybody was at practice yesterday. The only person that was at DNP was Trevor Keegan, the backup offensive lineman. So everybody there. Today, A.J. Brown, more precautionary, but it looks like the Eagles are going to go in at full strength, and the Packers a little banged up. We'll have more on that tomorrow on Football at 4. Adam Caplan, everybody. Thanks, bud.
Thank you.